Have you ever wondered what ancient Romans did for fun? What games they played? How they entertained themselves? And how they pleasured themselves? We all know about gladiators and chariots, emperors and prostitutes. But little is known about the everyday lives of the common people in ancient Rome. Today, we are going to be talking about one aspect of their private life that was never meant to be discussed publicly: the clitoris. What did it look like? Did Roman women even have them? And how did women please themselves? Let's find out. Women in ancient Rome were considered inferior to men, and most of the artifacts associated with them reflect this sad reality. However, some pieces of evidence suggest that Roman women had a positive self-image, and that they were quite comfortable in their own body. In this video, I will talk about some interesting objects connected to the female body, specifically those used by women for their own pleasure. These artifacts are rare because women were expected to cover their naked bodies at the time, so anything related to female pleasure was not meant to be seen by anyone other than the woman herself. Women's sexuality and pleasure were taboo subjects, so there aren't many written sources or artwork depicting these topics either. But luckily, archaeologists have found some objects that can tell us something about the topic. In this video, I will discuss 4 objects which prove that Roman women enjoyed sex and knew exactly how to please themselves. Number 1. The goddess of love. There are no sources that would state whether the ancient Romans believed that women had a clitoris or not. However, the Romans weren't very discreet when it came to acquiring the gods from other cultures. When a new god was adopted into the Roman religion, it was usually done with just a minor retcon. So if the Romans believed that women had a clitoris, chances are that there was a goddess who embodied this body part. The Romans had no goddess of the clitoris, but the Greeks did. Well, actually, she wasn't only a goddess of the clitoris, but her attributes also included marriage and childbirth. Her name was Hera, and she was worshipped as a fertility goddess. She had a cult statue in the Temple of Juno in the Roman Forum, and the priestesses of Juno also served as her priestesses. Some scholars believe that Hera was originally a local Italian deity, who was later identified with the Greek goddess, while others claim that she was imported into Italy with colonists from Greece. Whatever the case may be, the Romans didn't hesitate to appropriate the Greek goddess as their own. Hera's cult statue was kept in the Temple of Hera in the Roman Forum. According to legend, this temple was built by Romulus after he founded the city of Rome. It was the oldest and most important temple dedicated to Hera in Rome. However, none of its remains were found, so it's possible that it never existed at all. The story of Romulus building a temple for Hera might be nothing more than a literary fiction created to establish a connection between the mythical founder of Rome and the traditional head of the Julian gens, which was Hera. The Greeks were well aware of the female anatomy, and they left many depictions of women with exposed genitals. As I said before, this type of artwork is absent from ancient Rome. This might mean that the Romans didn't worship a goddess of the clitoris. However, the Romans adopted a lot of things from the Greeks, but that doesn't mean that they automatically started believing in the same deities. The Romans also had their own version of Aphrodite, and her name was Venus. While Aphrodite was often depicted as a nude goddess in Greece, Venus was always fully clothed in ancient Rome. Even the famous statue of Venus de Milo has her genitals covered by the folds of her dress. When you think about it, it's weird that the Romans didn't have a goddess of the clitoris, since women's role in society was limited. At best, Roman women could live luxurious lives, take care of their looks, and enjoy being the center of attention. If the Romans truly believed that women had a clitoris, they would probably try to come up with an explanation for its purpose. It was believed that the clitoris was the source of female sexual desire, so it must have been extremely confusing for ancient people to figure out why women wanted sex when they didn't have a penis. It's much easier to explain female desire if you believe that women don't have a clitoris. No. 2. The jade stone. Little is known about the use of jade in the Roman Empire. The gem was brought into Europe through trade with India, China, and other Asian countries. The first known mention of jade in Rome dates back to Augustus, and from then on, it became fashionable among the upper classes. Jade was often carved into cameos or used as inlays in furniture, weapons, and jewelry. Although the Romans didn't know that the stone came from Asia, they named it after one of their favorite places, the Jades. This small gem in the shape of a phallus is assumed to be a pendant that was used for masturbation. Its shape is obviously phallic, and experts say that it was made for insertion into the vagina. Unlike the Greeks, the Romans weren't really into making erotic art, so it's hard to say whether this object was indeed used for that purpose. It's entirely possible that it was just a toy that had nothing to do with female sexuality. Still, it's hard to ignore the fact that the object resembles a phallus, and that it was found in a tomb of a woman. This particular artifact was discovered in the tomb of Lucania, and it dates back to the 1st century BC. The tomb was discovered near Naples, and it's one of the most famous examples of Roman erotic art. The discovery of the tomb was quite shocking for the locals because the skeletons of a man and a woman were found embracing each other. It was obvious that they died while having sex, and it was the first and only case of a Roman erotic tomb ever found. The deceased couple was likely in their 30s, and their relationship might have been more than just romantic. Recent research suggests that the male skeleton belonged to a gladiator. The woman was likely his partner and the owner of the tomb. Number 3. Mirror. Mirrors in ancient Rome were used primarily for grooming purposes, but they also served a different function. Small mirrors were sometimes used as a form of contraception during sex. It's unknown whether this practice was common or not, but several ancient authors mention it. The earliest source comes from Petronius's book, the Satyricon, and it dates back to the 1st century. In this novel, the main character is described as inserting a small mirror into his female slave to prevent pregnancy. There are 3 theories about how this method works. The first theory is based on the assumption that the mirror was inserted into the vagina. Of course, this would have no effect on the menstrual cycle, but it could potentially block sperm from entering the vagina. The second theory is that the mirror was inserted into the uterus. This theory seems far-fetched considering the fact that the mirror could cause serious damage. Still, it's possible that desperate lovers risked injuring the woman to prevent pregnancy. The third option is that the mirror was placed on top of the vulva. This would definitely block the sperm from reaching the egg, but it seems unlikely that the woman would be able to enjoy sex with an object pressed against her genitals. Unfortunately, we don't have any archaeological evidence that could tell us more about this practice. In fact, we don't have any mirrors that were used for contraceptive purposes. The oldest example of a Roman cosmetic mirror was discovered in Pompeii, and it dates back to 79 AD. This beautiful piece of artwork was found in the ruins of the Villa dei Mestieri, and it's now kept in the National Archaeological Museum in Naples. Number 4. Erotic frescoes. Frescoes were used as a form of decoration in ancient Rome, and they often depicted mythological scenes. Erotic frescoes were much rarer, but they did exist. Most of these paintings were found in Pompeii, and they date back to the 1st century AD. However, they don't depict women taking pleasure from their own genitals. Instead, they show women in various stages of undress. It's believed that these frescoes were made for the entertainment of wealthy landowners. Pompeii was mostly inhabited by poor people, so the paintings were likely made for the enjoyment of the upper classes. This particular fresco shows a woman who's bathing. She's completely nude, but it doesn't seem like she's engaging in sexual activity. This painting is called Leda and the Swan, and it depicts the moment when Zeus seduces the Spartan queen Leda. A similar scene was painted on the walls of the Villa of Mysteries. Many people believe that these paintings were part of a larger series, but unfortunately, they haven't survived to modern times. These paintings are still extremely valuable because they provide us with insight into the Roman views on female nudity. Ancient Romans were fascinated by female beauty, and they loved to paint women in various states of undress. Female nudity wasn't considered taboo, but it was never shown in connection with female pleasure. These paintings were meant to be decorative, and they were never used to promote female sexuality. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my page. Have a great day, and see you next time. Bye.